Welcome, everybody. This is the Internet-Global Network. We're going to do breaking news show, NewS'how. How do you know what you know? And I'm just going to call it the breaking news, and I'm not going to put any subject matter in it because of internal technical conflicts. Okay, let me just say that again, so if those of you in the know, you can figure out what's going on. Internal technical conflicts between different parties. And not parties that are really together, but the party of the oppressor versus the person they want to marginalize or enslave or keep controlled, keep under wraps, keep oppressed, repressed, suppressed, and depressed in the Great Depression that's coming. So what have I been researching? I just had a few windows open here, and even though this is breaking news, we're looking at a whole bunch of stuff here from geologic history. And how important is it for us right now? There's zircon crystals. There's a theory that they are the oldest form of crystals. These were mined in, I think it was Western Australia, called the Jack Hills region. They're from sandstones. But the dating could have been different. They say lead could have been displaced atomically over time because of the decay. So it's something about uranium and lead. So that's a chemistry argument here. I was trying in a futile search to find out the age of the rocks that are at the bed or the seafloor of the Mediterranean. And there is nothing. I tried the different searches. Well, I should do an advanced search, but you would think if you put in Mediterranean age and mineral and how much basalt, there's nothing. There's these PDFs, but they did not have the answer. Why am I talking about this? Because I'm writing science stuff. Science and technology is definitely in the news. It's something that we should be aware of. When I finish my book on the history of the different ideas that we have in scientific knowledge, because there's a lot of stuff that they don't know, and they don't know that they don't know it because they're stuck on these different theories that are going on. I would mention geology, I would mention paleontology, I would mention archaeology and anthropology, the evolutionists, so on and so forth, even the creationists, the flood people, everyone who believes in that, maybe like a literal conservative approach to that, traditional, the Great Deluge, and what it all means. Because to me, that is a brief distillation of what the science was teaching several thousand years ago. And it supposedly, according to the Theosophists, dates to an earlier time where they had something called the secret doctrine. I want to move from science right now and talk about warfare. This is Tarpley, Webster Tarpley. I think that was one of my main inspirations today for doing this video. This is not breaking news, but he talks about Ron Paul during the election and how Ron Paul was really an auxiliary facet of the Romney campaign, if you want to call it that. And this was against the Obama campaign, and you try to interpret the actions and statements of these politicians, and you see this whole politico background that's happening. The shadowy government that makes this happen, from the party system to the different backdoor deals shady deals that are going on. And this certainly would characterize Ron Paul. I call it myself. I don't like to believe everything that Webster Tarpley says just because it's good to be a skeptic. I expect people to be that with me. But after you mull it over for long enough, compare all the different takes and come up with your own, and then see actually what makes more sense. So Tarpley, I have to be careful with just because he is so knowledgeable that you just don't want to fall into the trap that everything that he says is accurate, because it's not. But on a lot of things, his theory, his understanding of the political system, the geopolitical international situation, history, he's also well studied in economy. And here, I didn't read this article yet, but he's going back to April 12th, 1945. And of course, everybody should know that's the day that FDR Roosevelt, the second Roosevelt, not Theodore, not the one on Mount Rushmore, the one that got the presidency during the Great Depression and went into World War II and ended in the last year of World War II. So Tarpley considers this a British coup d'etat. So I'm taking all the information in and presenting it because the Russians, especially characterized as in Stalin's statements on it, Stalin's opinion on it, and various others, that this was an assassination. So I'm not going to give you any spoilers here. I'm just saying that I'm studying this. It is in book 2 of my volume on the Roosevelt history, his life and times. I'll put the link down below if you haven't seen it yet. Some of you have. So that's a writing project that I'm doing. There's also going to be a lot of photos that I've been sifting through. There's a pretty good record, a visual documentation. Roosevelt was born at a time when cameras and photography, still photography, was really getting out there. They could take photos within a few seconds. Not instantaneous like you have today, because the shutters had just been invented and photographic film. But that's another technology thing. That's another science thing. I really want to stick to this thing about what the nations are doing right now and get into the neocons today that seem to be resurfacing. They're really rising from the dead. And that's what I want to say. A lot of these older people, this generation that were young and entrepreneuring, taking advantage and exploiting their positions during World War II, namely, first and foremost, Bush the older, Bush the first, son of Prescott Bush. And all of those of his cronies and the interconnections, those that pulled off the JFK assassination. Now, why that was done, you see how I mentioned the FDR assassination here. It's somewhat tied in with that. It follows from that. You could not have the FDR assassination, or I should say not have the JFK without the FDR. There's a little bit of bad blood that came about between FDR and JFK, or the Roosevelt family in general. You can know for sure about that because of, if you read my book 2, Joseph Kennedy, the father, the first Kennedy, who raised up his sons to get into politics, ended up being against FDR because he blamed the death of his first son on FDR and the war. Now, a lot of things were starting to go on since the 1940s, which you see to this day still going on. So, as I said, this older generation still has their hands on power. They have a death grip on it, you know, like racing down the road with the white knuckle going on, grabbing the steering wheel and deathly afraid to let go. But what you're going to see is a changeover pretty soon, because these people will be dying out. Reagan already died several years ago. Well, actually, a good six or 7 years ago. Over 7 years ago. Double check my timing as of the recording in this video. And in those years, you've also had some others pass away. Cheney is about ready to go. Why he should have anything to say is neocons raising from the dead. It's almost like they're trying to, you know, have some kind of a comeback. And what you will see getting put together is a big Republican neocon run in the next couple years, because the presidential elections this year is a lot of the governors or all the governors are going to be reelected elections, and in the 2 years there's a lot of talk now about Hillary Clinton, and there's Republicans, and going back to this Ron Paul thing, you have Tarpley talking about Ron Paul. And then you have, of course, Alex Jones. Something wrong with his voice there. The guy is not in such great shape, although he's selling all these healthy, organic products so that you can survive. But what he's actually doing with his own body, it's interesting. If you're running a business selling those products, you have to be an example yourself for sales. So, whoever's buying this stuff, you really should question more carefully. Alex Jones, a lot of what he says is good, but his end conclusion is really the main thing. What point does he keep driving home? What he says in the beginning and how he works up to it. He's a master orator. Same thing as Webster Tarpley. But here what they're debating about, which seems to be a legitimate discussion here. Tarpley is not promoting the Pauls at all. Alex Jones, as you obviously have to know, was promoting them to the hilt. And he's doing all kinds of things to bring all of his audience over to Ron Paul. And that's what happened a couple years ago. And this was the biggest scam that I ever seen from in recent years to dupe and fool and swindle all the people that want to be involved with change and alternative and politics, third party, libertarian. Ron Paul's not a libertarian. The Libertarian Party should divest themselves of them. Some guy who's a Republican, a career politician, an incumbent, he ought to get his old ass out of that seat. I have nothing against old people. I'm actually quite old myself. But when you get up into your past your 60s, you're in your 70s, and you're getting into your 80s, these people should just really be silent advisors. The prime time for politics is between your 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And this period of about 40 years is where you get people with the balance of what's supposed to be skills and capabilities to be the decision makers and the rulers. Neocons have other problems much more than age, but I've just touched on a little bit of it. Maybe I'll go back to do some more, but that's the end of our